Hello and welcome everybody, and thank you guys for joining me into the quick Lost Ark tutorial, not necessarily only for the beta, but especially targeted at new players. I will show you guys how you can figure out what kind of skills you want to use during your leveling process, and this is important. This will probably be very different from your skill builds that you're going to be using in late game, especially compared to the raid builds that you're going to be using. This is optimized to kill mobs or groups of mobs fairly quickly, based on low cooldowns, and based on mobility or utility around. The first thing I want to show you is that this is Trixion. This unlocks at around level 30. Depending on how many side quests you do, you might be level 29, you might be 31. If you don't have Trixion, don't be alarmed. You can also try out your skills basically anywhere for free. The only problem is you don't have the cooldown reduction at hand. So, by talking to Beatrice, we're now in the training room. So what we're going to do now is just give us unlimited resources here, and now we can spam to our heart's content, which is really good. On to the cookbook. There are basically 3 rules, or maybe 3.5 rules, that I would go for in order to determine if I find a skill useful while leveling or not. The first rule is very simple. Anything that has a low cooldown and has a high benefit is definitely to be used. For Deadeye, for example, there are 2 skills that with the use of 4 skill points, I will get a crit debuff that allows me to crit 10% more often, which doesn't sound like a lot, but given that our stats are all over the place and my basic crit rate is 7.5% at the moment, that already turns that crit rate into 17.5, which is a massive boost compared to what I currently have. So, like I said, these are 2 short cooldown skills that have a good tripod. So try to look at your skills, see if there are low cooldown skills that either deal good amount of damage, have a good amount of AoE, or maybe have useful tripods, which in my case, for example here, is a crit debuff. Other classes may have a damage debuff, armor reduction, stuff like that, that really helps you, or maybe gauge builder, depending on like if you're playing a class like Berserker, Shadow Hunter, which are basically trying to build their gauge as fast as possible. This is always something that could be very beneficial. The second tip, or the second rule, is try to find skills that enhance your mobility or are mobility skills themselves. For example, on Devil Hunter, I have a skill that grants me 20% movement speed for 3 seconds upon use. Now, this doesn't sound like a lot if you think about it, but in the leveling process, which probably is going to take you something along the lines of 15-ish hours, if you use this skill on an 8-second cooldown with 3-second buff, this definitely adds up over while, especially while in combat. Also, I have a bunch of skills that are literally just movement tools. For example, this one here basically looks almost entirely the same as my spacebar, but just allows me to move around much quicker. It doesn't really deal any damage, but it's definitely there to help me move around quicker. Definitely a must-take. There's other skills, for example, like this one here, where I could enhance the attack speed and the movement that I can cover with it, which adds on top of my mobility, especially since this is also used as a little bit of a damage booster. So, TLDR for the second rule is try to find mobility skills. Obviously, if they have short cooldowns, as you can see, this one has 9-second cooldown. If I really wanted to, I could even add attack speed to it, but that really, the skill itself is actually fairly fast, so I wouldn't really bother with this. If you really want to go ham on the movement, you can see that we can either make the skill jump a little bit further, or reduce the cooldown by 3 seconds. Obviously, this doesn't, you don't really see that because I have unlimited cooldowns. Oh, I don't want to finish the training. So this now has a 6-second cooldown, as opposed without the tripod, it has a 9-second cooldown. So you can see there are definitely ways to move around faster, and movement or faster movement is definitely going to help you. The third rule that I want to give you guys in a way here is try to find skills that have a decent amount of damage, preferably with tripods that help you clear bosses or trash mobs. In this case, I'm going to be using Equilibrium as an example here. And I will be using this tripod here. Actually, no, we're just going to use that tripod, or without this. So, I'm going to summon a few mobs here. And we're just going to take a look at the damage. So this is typically something you might find in most dungeons, that there's a bunch of mobs trying around here. And you can see that this skill, it does a decent amount of damage, but it's not able to kill all of those mobs by itself. However, if I would take this skill tripod here, so now I have enemy raid, which turns the skill, first of all, into a 360. We're just going to put this on here. So now we have a 360. And we also have added damage to targets which are challenge or lesser foes. And challenge or lesser foes, as you can see here, we have named mobs and we have challenge mobs. So mobs with a red outline actually count towards this. So basically everything outside like a huge boss, you will be killing faster with this tripod. And I'm just going to show you guys here what that looks like in the end. Let's go summon these, and remember we used 2 skills and didn't really kill everything. Now we're just going to use that one ability. And you can see we just decimated all of them. So try to find tripods that have enhancing effects, not necessarily in the first one, but typically in the second row, that allow you to kill mobs faster. And this one has a 16-second cooldown, which is definitely a bit on the longer side, but I also have skills that have like 30 seconds or even 36-second cooldowns. And that kind of leads me into the last bonus tip that I want to give you guys in a way here. In case you have tripods that allow you to remove or reduce the cooldown of abilities, definitely see if it's worth taking it, and how difficult it is to reach. So for example here, this skill has a 30-second cooldown, so this is a very, very long cooldown. However, the damage on this ability is also pretty heavy. Remember, we used that tripoded ability here in order to kill all of those mobs here. Just look at what happens if I use the shotgun. Boom. I just killed the same type of mobs with the same amount of abilities in just with that one tripod. However, this thing has a 30-second cooldown. But if you were to take this tripod here, it now only has an 11-second shorter cooldown, so we're down to 25 seconds, which is almost a 30% reduction in cooldown. Now you could ask yourself, why just not take the damage tripod? And you're partially correct about this. If we're talking about damage per se, it wouldn't really make a huge difference. However, meaning you have a better cooldown means you get to use the skill more frequently, which is incredibly good, because if you actually leveled or did a few dungeons, you know that you have constant mob groups coming around to you, and sometimes you may find yourself not having any skills ready. That will definitely be much cleaner once you have the cooldown reduction on, so I would highly suggest check if there are any cooldown tripod nodes, especially with a huge ass reduction in terms of cooldown. As you can see here, this one here has 30-second cooldown, and it grants me a 6-second cooldown reduction. So compared to this one here, this essentially is like almost double the cooldown reduction, even though the skill is only 20% longer, right? We have 30-second cooldown, but we're going to be reduced to 24 seconds. This one has a 36-second cooldown, and with that tripod, we're going to be reduced to 25 seconds. So both of these skills in the end would have the same kind of cooldown. Obviously, this one is going to be much more potent because of how much damage it deals. And this is all that I want to give you guys, not to bloat this up. TLDR is find skills that have a decent cooldown and have some kind of utility, be that movement speed or anything, crit, damage reduction, damage buffs, anything that you can do to help your damage output and your clear speed is definitely to be used. Second rule, TLDR, find something that allows you to move around faster, because you're going to be walking a lot in this game, especially at the start. So any movement ability that allows you to move around faster will be beneficial. Lastly, find a damage skill or find damage abilities that allow you to clear mobs faster and good and efficiently. And as a bonus tip, try to look for cooldown tripods, because that will allow you to reuse your skills much more often. And this is all for the tip and for the cookbook. I do hope this was helpful, especially to the newer players. In case you want to see me live, I also stream sometimes on Twitch. You can find the link in the description below. Outside of that, I do hope this was helpful, and I'll see you guys next time. So do stay safe, and I'll see you around.
You want me to take you back?